What are some surprising things people don't know about the document handling industry?
Nobody cares about document workflow. We ran 2 marketing cells for our latest campaign. We did like a positive and a negative. One was win deals, one was don't lose deals. Guess which one won? And it won by a large amount. Don't lose deals. People are afraid of loss.
You spent over 10 years in Google.
Google was fundamental in shaping who I am as a business person and leader. I can't tell you how many companies I talk to where they hate their tool, right?
What makes this your job worth pursuing?
The biggest impact is on what you do for customers. And as a CRO, that's fundamentally what you're doing. You're impacting customers, bringing them in, and in return, they're giving value to your company.
Why did you stop writing, by the way? I wanted to shame you a little bit. Why?
LinkedIn is, in some ways, it's my favorite website, but I don't like the self-promotion.
Right. So what is the big no-no when selling to a CRO like yourself? Keith Rabkin, Chief Revenue Officer at PandaDoc. In 2023, the company reported annual revenue of over 120 million with a customer base of around 30,000 businesses. Before joining PandaDoc as CRO, Keith has spent over 20 years of operating experience owning P&Ls and leading teams in GTM in companies like Google, Adobe, and Johnson & Johnson. Keith is also one of the few individuals to ever win the Great Manager Award at Google and is currently actively mentoring different startups. I have a strange question to kick this off with. How big is PandaDoc's market share?
Well, I can't answer that, but I can tell you that we are a leading solution for agreements. I think there are very few companies that are a single solution for everything you need for an agreement, from the signature to the proposal to the quote to the digital sales room or digital room. I don't think any company can do as much as we can there. So I won't talk about market share, but I will tell you, I think we are a leading provider of that and well recognized for it.
How many thousands businesses you have in your list of clients?
So we have about 60,000 paying customers and many more customers who have created free trials with us, many customers who use our free e-sign product, which is more limited in scope, and then many users within those 60,000 paying customers.
You're the first person from this industry that I talked to, so I wanted to pick your brain into what's happening within this vertical. So who you're considering to be your main competitor? DocuSign? Or they're not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to talk about individual competitors because I think we do really well on our own merits. But if you think about agreements, there are roughly, several different categories. The first is pure play e-signature, where all you're trying to do is get a signature on a document. It's relatively not differentiated. And I think when you're looking at that, it's important to make sure you know what you're getting, that you're working with a company that will pay attention to what you really care about, and has all the features and functionality, which most of them do. But then you move into more complex agreements, right? You have HR contracts where you have a signature, but you also want to convey some important information about your company and why this person might want to work for your company, or remind them of why your employer brand is really strong. That's where PandaDoc, I think, really differentiates itself from other competitors because it's all done in the browser. You don't have to deal with PDFs and uploading. I mean, I think that's one of the really interesting things is the space has moved from what was paper documents into digital documents. And so if you can find a single provider, that becomes really powerful. And then the third category where I think we really differentiate is in sales agreements, where you not just need a signature, but you need a proposal, you need analytics to see who's opened and viewed your proposal, and you want your brand to stand forward. We know that when customers have a brand-centric proposal, they close deals at a much higher rate. And then the last piece of that, which I think is really important and something PandaDoc announced last week, was our entry into CPQ, configuration, pricing, and quoting, which is getting these more complex quotes with rules out And if you know anything about CPQ, it's important for agreements, and it's a space where we've had a couple of legacy vendors that live there, and their solutions are really clunky. They're bad for salespeople. They're hard for RevOps to implement. They change a lot. When I talk to people who are using CPQ solutions, they almost always hate what they're using. And so PandaDoc wraps that all up as part of the agreement.
So these are the quotes, I know in HubSpot, right? When you create the custom quotes and proposals.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They can get out of hand very quickly with a lot of different terms. And I know my sales op was struggling setting it up and automating that for the sales team. So, kudos, nice direction you guys are taking. Now, what makes PandaDoc a leading company? You guys have more customers, you have better tool, better team, more market share, just generally, what you say leading? You guys get more awards. Why leading?
Yeah, I would say we are for sure the best for small and medium-sized businesses. Because it's an all-in-one tool. What do I care about? I care about having a single tool that does everything I need for agreements. I care about a tool that's easy to use. I think we excel at that ease of use. And 3, we need a tool that's powerful, but also showcases your brand.
Yeah.
Think about how much money CMOs are spending on their brand. And have you ever gotten a quote from a software provider?
Yeah. Some of them are good,
terrible.
some of them are shit. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. And so if you're CMO spending all this money, the most important document is the one you're going to sign on to spend 6 figures. You better make it look good. You better tell your story right there. Because even though I may have signing authority, I still have to pass it on to my CFO. He's going to look through it. And without that context of what it is and why the results are important, he's going to ask me a lot of questions. It's going to take a longer time. And we know the saying, time kills all deals, right? So make sure that you can get that signature fast and say yes to revenue.
The benchmark of like easy to do business with, does it affect you as well? Does it apply to your business as well? Like in terms of how easy it's to work with PandaDoc comparing to other solutions, or it's not?
Absolutely. So a lot of what I would say are other providers, they will charge you with overages. If you commit to buying a certain number of documents per year, I'm going to send 5,000 documents out for signature. You go to that 5,000 and first document, your rate may double. You may pay 2x what you're paying for your current document. PandaDoc does not do that. We are transparent in our pricing. We want to make it easy for you. We're not trying to squeeze companies for every dollar we can. We really believe in having a win-win relationship with our customers. And that's really important to me as the CRO here. I run both sales and customer experience, and I want to make sure that we make it easy. We always have room to do better, for sure. I got an escalation from a customer yesterday. They weren't happy with what happened. And we took that and we immediately learned from it. I went to my CSM team and we talked about what we could do better. But that is something that I care about. And in today's world, where you can choose so many different vendors, I want to make it easy for people to do business with us.
Now, thinking about all of this, you've been with the company for about like 2 years or more than 2 years now in holding the CRO title. From all of this, was anything or what was part of your contribution or your vision or some of the ideas that you brought into the table versus the roadmap that the company had before you joined the organization?
Yeah, so one of the first things we decided to do was to make it easier to do business with PandaDoc. And so when I joined, we had a lot of different roles within the company. We had SDRs, we had AEs, we had AMs, we had renewal managers, we had CSMs, we had sales engineers and solution engineers. We've tried to streamline that so you never really need more than 2 people in your interaction with PandaDoc. It's the person who sells to you and then your service team.
Right.
In fact, we don't have SDRs anymore. We had great SDRs. I mean, we had a really good team, but what we found is it was actually advantageous for the customer just to talk to the AE. So our AEs are full cycle now. They get the leads, they work the leads, they help the customer understand what we do. And we've seen that's really beneficial to both the customer and our business. So I think that streamlined customer journey is one thing I'm really proud of. The other is We know customers are more successful when they get to value early. And so we've spent a lot of time working through how do we drive digital adoption within the product and assisted adoption through onboarding packages. We try to price those adoption packages right at what they cost us, but we know that when the customers invest the amount of money they're buying from us in services and getting to know the product, they do really well. Our CSM team is amazing. They do a really good job of understanding workflow and helping customize the product for people to get to that value really quickly.
Besides sales, marketing, customer service, I also saw on your bio that you run partnerships, and I saw your partnership and integration with HubSpot. And it brought me to the conversation that I had with a delivery director from Everest Group when she mentioned that one of the big requirements right now for a lot of businesses is like how the integrated solution is within the sort of like spectrum. So any thoughts to share on the role of key partnerships in the organization, as well as, the way you've built this up, and then the role of integration generally? And is that something that most of the tech companies should pursue at this point, in
I think many tech companies are pursuing it, but the way I think about it is in today's world, there are so many best of breed software, right? You can choose whoever you want for so much really powerful functionality. It doesn't make sense for customers to try to build everything on their own. You want to get a provider who provides the base solution with as much fidelity as possible, but then you want to make sure that as you extend forward or backwards into other workflows, you get a really good provider. And so PandaDoc has no interest in being a CRM. We're never going to be a CRM. We're never going to be an HRIS system. But we know that when we partner and integrate with those systems, we extend their functionality. We help you get that information from that signature, get the customer to sign, and you can pull that information back into your system of record. And it makes those systems much more powerful. Some of our integration guiding principles are that we want to be where the most powerful systems are. Those are these like system of records. We want to make it easy for a customer. So our integrations, while we don't have as many integrations as some others, we do a really good job of making sure they're smooth and delightful experiences. So last week, we released CPQ for HubSpot. It's this incredible guided selling experience that lives right in the Sales Hub experience. And customers actually are responding really positively to the ability to get that quote right from the Sales Hub user experience that they love. And that's where sales reps spend every moment of their day. So as we continue to invest in integrations, we want to make sure that they're really native, powerful, that they always have bi-directional sync so that the information comes back into that system. We make it easy for our customers. That's the guiding principle.
When I think about the integration with someone like HubSpot, what do you do extra, or what do you do else besides, actually doing the integration? Like what kind of work you guys are doing to essentially activate this partnership and nurture it and generate more value? Because, as far as I know, the value of integration is as far as it's not just about the integration, but what comes after that. So, can you talk to me about this?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things we're doing. One, we're partnering really heavily with solution providers. Again, I talked about onboarding, and onboarding is really important. We want to make sure that our solution providers that work extensively in the HubSpot ecosystem, and they have a really huge ecosystem, that they help understand the customer's detailed requirements and stitch these two pieces of software together in a really elegant solution. And those solution partners continue to provide value. We've spent a ton of time working with leaders at those companies to see how they're helping their customers meet the specific needs, which are often by the vertical they're in, whether they're in advertising or manufacturing or finance or healthcare. What they need will need to be customized. PandaDoc, it would take a really long time for us to build PandaDoc for healthcare, PandaDoc for manufacturer, PandaDoc for real estate. But these solution partners are really good at doing that. And so one of the things we're doing is spending a lot of time with them to make sure that our solution is customizable, and it is, to the needs of those verticals, the needs of those unique use cases. and then making sure that they can carry that through into HubSpot. And we're starting to do the same thing in other ecosystems like Monday.com and Salesforce as well.
No.
So that's what I like. And then I really like making sure that my CSMs get some of that information too, so that when they're providing ongoing value to these customers, they understand what that customer cares about.
Nice. I wanted to go back to the point when you mentioned that you have a full cycle AEs, which is interesting thing to say or to think of, because I've spoke about this before, that more and more companies are looking into full cycle sales, just because the typical typical bond between the BDRs or SDRs and AEs have been broken a little, because like there's not accountability, like, you know, deals are not closing or pipeline not generated. So confirm me if I'm wrong or not, but you've moved to full cycle AEs because you generate substantial amount of inbound leads that is enough for them to build their pipeline, so they don't need to go out and build their own accounts anymore, or they do that as well.
They do. Today we segment about 15% of their time into outbound and 85% is inbound. But those inbound leads, we know that AEs are qualified to do discovery on them. They understand what is going to turn into pipeline and what's not. So by not having an SDR in the process, it does two things. One, it makes sure that the AE is qualifying the right opportunities. And two, it makes it easier for the customer. I mean, everything I do goes back to the customer. We want PandaDoc to be customer first. And so if you're a customer and you're really excited to learn about the software and you have a call with an SDR, they qualify you and then they hand you off. You've got to wait usually, right? Sometimes it's done over email, sometimes it's done live, but that qualification takes time and sometimes things are lost, right? We know even with great conversational intelligence and call recording, you don't always get the right information into your CRM. So then when you meet the AE, you're almost starting over, repeating yourself. That's not a great customer experience. I want the customer to have a really fantastic first call with my team.
Yeah. You said 15% of the time or 50% of the time they do outbound, and
it's 15. We're growing that, but we're starting at 15.
This is nice. What are some surprising things people don't know about the document handling industry that you can share?
A lot of people don't know that there are overages. So you sign a contract, many of the providers will hit you with an overage if you go over the amount of documents that you bought. The other is a lot of companies will really increase your rates going into year two. So when your contract is up, you get surprised. We've seen that very often. So one of our big competitors, again, will raise rates like 5 days before your renewal. You're like, these companies freak out. They come to us and we always try to do a really good job of getting their documents into our system as quickly as possible. But that to me is one of those questions, like make sure you know who you're getting and how they will treat you. Like that's one of the things. Being a customer first company, we're not going to do that to customers. Doesn't mean we won't raise rates over time, but we try to be really fair about it and give transparent warning.
Wanted also touch based on the GTM motion that you guys deploy. How does the GTM playbook at PandaDoc look like?
Yeah, so today a lot of it is inbound, as I mentioned.
Right.
We do a lot through search marketing, like feels like everybody in SaaS does quite a bit in search marketing. And I think we've got a really good SEO program. It's been written up a couple times as something really positive, and we've gotten really good accolades for that. Doesn't mean we can't improve. I think we definitely can, but that is a big component. We have started branching out into other areas. We see customer strength in particular verticals, one of which is in the trade industry. And we see, smaller businesses not using SEM or not like finding us in search as much. And so we've started doing more social. Now we do that in LinkedIn for more of that classic tech persona. We do some of the trades industry in Facebook, and connected TV ads we've experimented with as well and seen some success. So I do think we have a pretty good go-to-market motion that is inbound driven. And as I mentioned, we've started doing more on the outbound side. We've been resurrecting some of our cold leads, these leads that have come in. They may have talked to a salesperson and then dropped off. They go dark. We're resurrecting those with outbound. We see the same thing with people who come in via trial. I think what makes us interesting is we've got a trial pipeline and a sales pipeline. And that trial pipeline allows you to try and experiment with the product. And when you're ready, you can talk to sales. But we also have that straight to sales pipeline.
So for new acquisition, you do content, search, social, advertising. You guys do also, what about that more upmarket enterprise sales? You guys do trade shows, face-to-face. Like how big is that motion at this point?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. We've got some very big, large, amazing customers. You can look on our website. Some of them aren't even on our website, but everything up to the Fortune 50 companies. We have not gone after them with anything different than what we're doing. We have not worked on trade shows. We haven't done big partnerships with, consulting firms, which are a good pathway. We have not done Gartner. Those companies come to us naturally, right? Which I think is a testament to us being a really good solution on the market that can meet the needs of customers from the small guys all the way to these large companies. And again, I think it goes back to what matters, and it's great user experience, ability to showcase your brand, and ability to save time with our solution.
So like ideal kind of PLG motion in terms of the growth, right? So the one product can sell itself, basically. You don't need the sales team to go after anything.
We have a great PLG motion. That trial pipeline is massive for us, and we see tons of customers coming in from the trial. But we also see high intent customers coming straight into our demos. They know they want PandaDoc, and they talk to sales and they close in a pretty quick time, I think, by standards in the SaaS industry.
When you guys are deploying your GTM motion, what do you prefer to keep in-house versus what do you outsource right now that helps you to get some extra muscles?
We do a lot in-house. I mean, my marketing team is fantastic. It's an awesome marketing team. They do design of assets in-house. They flight the ads. They write the copy. I do think we're experimenting in particular around international. One of my bigger beliefs is to do international well, you've got to have feet on the ground.
Right.
And I'm based in California. I don't know the market in Germany, France, Spain, Nordics, as well as someone who is on the ground, not even close. And so that's a place where I do think we can use agencies much more effectively to understand what customers are saying there, the natural language, because I think oftentimes if you translate things, it's not the same as the language that's actually used feet on the street. And so that's a place. I do think there's a lot of great work from agencies as well, just around new go-to-market channels. So when we did connected TV, we worked through a DSP that had a lot of expertise in video, and that continues to be a place that we pull information from.
What about content, SEO, trying to keep that in-house, all of it?
Yeah, we do that in-house. The team, like I said, that team is phenomenal. They've just done a really amazing job of creating content, driving fresh content. I like to write content too. I'm not sure I'm an SEO expert, but I have, they've been doing a good job of forcing me to write thought leadership and either put it into the website or put it on LinkedIn. So
I highly encourage people listening to this, go to your Substack newsletter. I've enjoyed it a lot. Why did you stop writing, by the way? I think the last one was like 2023. I wanted to shame you a little bit. Why not writing more?
That's good to shame me. So I shifted from a lot of writing about what I personally cared about to writing more about what I think PandaDoc should be known for. And to me, that doesn't belong on Substack. That belongs in our website and on LinkedIn. But I also ran out of topics. So if people have topics that they think would be good for me, I'm happy to write about them and put them back on Substack. I had, a couple people in my network wrote me and gave me some ideas, and I posted those, but I ran out. It's not like I said everything I have to say, but the other piece that I think is weird is like LinkedIn is in some ways, it's my favorite website.
Mm-hmm.
Like I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I look for talent in my spare time, try to find people to fill open roles. I look at content that's out there, but I don't like the self-promotion.
Right.
And so even though I'm on a podcast and even though I'm like writing articles, I wasn't trying to like promote myself or say anything, but it feels almost like that. And so like, that's part of why I stopped as well.
Yeah. Well, your newsletters are very authentic, very, I would say like professionally philosophical in a way, because you kind of, dive deeper into the topic. Yeah, I like the one about the T approach, and then a lot about the leadership, people development, recruiting, HR, motivation. Just I think I've read all of them. So
thank you. I had some really good role models on the T. So I was at Adobe. Our CEO there, Shantanu, was like the master at the T. Like he went across every function at Adobe and then could like go super deep into the very smallest things and like push us on them. So learned a lot from watching him and tried to do the same. I'm not sure I always succeed. My team would probably say like, get out of the weeds, Keith. But
for those that are not familiar, because again, I read People Didn't Tweet. Can you elaborate on what is that methodology is about, the T?
Yeah, so the T-shape is a philosophy for leadership that says leaders should act like a T, which means if you cover multiple functions, you need to be able to look across all those functions.
Right.
And you have to always understand them at some level of depth. It doesn't have to be all the way into the weeds, but you need to look over. So I run sales, marketing, CX partnerships, and RevOps. I've got to be able to look across them and constantly check my leaders and ask questions about them. But then when something is wrong or something isn't working at its ideal way, you have to be able to go deep. And you can't go deep in more than one place at a time. It's just too hard. So the ability to be broad, but then go deep where necessary is what the T-shape is about.
There's a lot of changes in my industry with regards to acquisition, AI being everywhere, and people are testing different approaches. Have there been any major changes to your GTM playbook in the past year, or any external factors that force you guys to adopt anything new?
We've played around with AI for outbounding. We've played around with it for content generation. I think in today's environment, I'm a believer in the hybrid approach, that AI can help you get started, but still requires a human for the content to feel really authentic and personal. So I think that's kind of where we stand now, is we're not using the AI to write all the content at all. I would say we're probably closer to like a 30% AI generation, 70%. Where I think it's really helped us is driving efficiency in research. So getting information and being able to ask AI to give me, like, go tell me about this company so that I can outbound them effectively. That's where I see it really helping. Other changes, I think we continue to see how search engine traffic is changing, right? I talked about being an inbound machine. When Google launched Gemini, we saw some changes in how our traffic came in, and we've been able to adjust to that. But I think that's really interesting, is to think about how you show up as a company in the Gemini, ChatGPT results.
Always do that.
Because getting in there will drive a disproportionate amount of traffic. And I think we will move more towards like a winner take all. Instead of seeing like 3 links at the top of the search screen, it's the person who shows up in that result that's going to really have a disproportionate win in terms of traffic.
100%. Mikita, the CEO of PandaDoc, one of his interviews said that he's lucky with his CRO hiring. You posted about this, so I'm just reading from your feed. Why do you think he said that?
I mean, I think he's happy with my performance, so I think that's why. But I mean, I'll turn it around. I think I'm really lucky to be here at PandaDoc. It's a great company, just like I said, mission driven in the sense of we are here to help companies remove things that don't matter for their business. We're here to help companies focus on what they care about. Nobody cares about document workflow. Like, I mean, maybe some people in ops like care about it, but people don't. They care about, if you're in sales, you care about closing deals. If you're in RevOps, you care about getting insights and getting a really good forecast. You don't want to spend a lot of time and resources on dealing with these document-driven workflows. If you're in HR, you don't care about like getting the HR contract out. You care about great candidate experience. You care about your employer brand. You care about people. If you are I just wrote about HVAC companies this morning. If you're an HVAC company, you want to like get back to repairing the HVAC. You don't want to deal with like the signature process. So how do you make that easy? I joke because I remember when e-signatures first came out, and actually not too long ago before I was at PandaDoc, like you have to download the document, you know, like sign it in a different piece of software. Then you might have to upload it. You have to forward it again. Sometimes I remember the days where you had to print it out, scan it. Like sometimes you upload the wrong document. It's really annoying and it's painful. Like it's just painful to like find where the file is and upload it. PandaDoc takes that away. So I feel really lucky to work at PandaDoc because I work for a company that is trying to help people. I work with an incredible team. I worked at Google, and Google's known for having some of the best people in the world, but I'll take my team at PandaDoc. Sorry to my ex-Google team, but I love this team. And, you know, just it's a great, exciting time to be in the business as we're growing.
Yeah. So going back to what Nikita said, again, I wanted to kind of advertise and sell you a little. So obviously he must have been, you know, happy with your performance, right? But what about the way, like how to easy work with, or the amount of things that you can, you know, take care of and take ownership for? The reason I wanted to stop on this because probably a lot of people are fancy to be CROs one day and wanted to be promoted, or they're CROs that are here, right? And for me, you know, having a C-level team, there are a lot of things besides just being a good performer that are very important and impactful for the entire organization. So what are the other things that you think are important in PandaDoc and are important for you that you think that Mikita can appreciate, but don't talk about this out loud?
I think one is collaboration. So I really can't do it all by myself, and I work well as a team. Some of the time that means that I have to embrace conflict. So I think I do that in a nice way. I'm like a nice conflict person where in some cases I've challenged Makita. I'm like, Makita, I disagree with your approach, but I bring data to make my case. And I would say sometimes he's like, okay, I see your point. Let's go with what you're doing. Sometimes he's like, I disagree. I'm the CEO and I'll disagree and commit. And I'm happy to do that. Like, I think when I disagree and commit, you got to get behind it. You've got to back the solution. You've got to make it your own. And that's really important. So I think those are really key pieces. The second is probably my favorite term, which is grit. You know, we've been in a challenging environment, right? It's really hard for SaaS companies right now. And, you know, grit involves tenacity and resilience, but also in purpose of a mission. And I try to live that. Like, you know, I just try to always give it my best and push. And it's not just about asking more from your team. It's about doing it yourself. And so I like to think that I show up with that and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. My team jokes with me. They're like, please stop writing copy, Keith, but I'll like write copy for an email, or I'll write my own thought leadership posts, or I'll pull my own analytics. I do these, you know, in the evening, because I think during the day, it's most important to be leading the team. But I think that's a piece of it as well.
So you spent over 10 years in Google, and for me it was like between 2007 and 2017. These are like, I think, like one of the best years for the internet and for IT in general. Like everything is booming, growing, new tech is happening. Um, can you give me any analogy of describing your time or your experience at Google?
I don't know if I can give an analogy, but I will say Google is fundamental in shaping who I am as a business person and leader. So I'm forever thankful for everything I learned there, the mentors I had, the founders. Like they don't know me, but Larry and Sergey, what they wrote in their founders letter and what they wrote in their IPO letter is just so incredibly impactful to how I think about business. It's things like hiring the best people you can, challenging convention, thinking big, solve problems with technology, not people, launch and iterate. That to me is what I like to take forward to how I run a business. So I think it was, I guess if I had to come up with an analogy, it's like a classroom. It's like going through, and I'm someone who loved school. So, a lot of people didn't like school, but I love school. So like going into a school and being constantly surrounded by new information and learning something new every day. And then the next year, when you graduate from being a junior to a senior, your classes get harder and you learn new kinds of subjects. Right. That's what being at Google was like. It was like every day I was learning something new and learned about how to optimize a sales team, and then how to optimize a product team, learned about getting into mobile, right? With Android, we learned about getting into commerce, getting into hardware. Those were like all the sorts of different things that I learned about, and I absolutely loved it.
It's because you've you moved from Google to YouTube to Google Fiber, and you kind of work on these different directions. Have you seen how the company overall have been changing in a positive or negative way over time, or because each company was like a sub company of other, that you always had that fresh perspective of like a startup vibe? Or there was some kind of, Google being bigger and bigger over year and then, shaping it what it is right now?
Yeah. So, and my journey was always trying to find a smaller and smaller part of Google. That's what led me to YouTube. And then Google Fiber was trying to find places where I could have more impact, be part of a scrappier culture. And, some people they like that big company where there's like a lot of checks and balances on anything you do. Your work is still important because you're part of a big machine. That big machine throws off hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars of revenue, but it's harder to see how you impact it. So I wouldn't suggest anybody is doing anything wrong being in that, but I wanted to be at a place where even though the numbers might be smaller, I could push them and drive them. That's what led me to those places. And, I found it. I mean, when I was at YouTube, we didn't even have a CRM. So it was a pretty interesting time. But just like, to me, that's really interesting. And the evolution to how these businesses incubated at Google and became so much bigger over time was really interesting.
So in your newsletters, you've been big on, talking about people, the HR, the culture, the leadership. And then you've mentioned one of the books that you like was From Good to Great that you read, right? And I have a people question. So how would you describe the people at these companies, at Google, Adobe, Johnson & Johnson, and now PandaDoc? Are they similar in a way, how they approach things, or they're different based on the culture and they're kind of built on the culture? So like, just if we just bucket the people.
Yeah. I think there's similarities and differences. I mean, similarities, everybody's smart. All four of these companies have very high caliber, smart people. I think there are differences, like J&J is an obvious one. Like fundamentally, people are scientists there. They love the study of like the science. They want the science to prove the value. At Google, it was very like the data was fundamental. It was data before anything. Adobe had a lot of that too. There was a very data rich culture. Google, I always thought, was incredibly product driven, right? The product drove the results for consumers and for businesses. Adobe, much more marketing driven. Like a lot of what they did was marketing driven. And so you had a more creative marketing style there. PandaDoc is kind of like this mix of everything. But again, like I talked about earlier, it feels much more scrappy. There's this urgency to get things done. And I wasn't at Google when it was as small as PandaDoc was. So maybe it was more like this. But that's the thing I love, and the passion behind doing what's right for our customers at PandaDoc. That is what truly stands out. Is this is a team that cares about the customer. We want to do what's right. Doesn't mean we won't make mistakes, but every time we do, we try to fix them as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Is it possible to get this info or know this before joining the organization to understand what they kind of stand for or what the vibe is inside? You think it's...
I think that's something people don't do enough of. When you're in an interview, make sure you're asking questions about what it's really like there. And I try to, at least when I'm trying to figure it out, to disarm my interviewer and just get them to like relax and tell you how things really are. You know, some of the questions I think people ask that maybe like red herrings a little bit are like, oh, what's the work-life balance like? That is like the signal that maybe you're not like you care less about the culture versus the time. But trying to understand and more like turn it back on the interview with a behavioral question, like what do people do when there's a conflict or they don't disagree? Like I'm not asking you what the culture is like. I'm asking you about a particular situation that exposes it, because the interviewer is trying to sell you, hopefully. But this gets at something where like they're answering a question. And I think when you frame it that way, they maybe aren't going to sell you as much. They'll just like answer it on how it really is.
Yeah. So for me personally, well, actually it's a funny story. Like one of the reasons why I started Belkins was I hated the interview processes of other organizations that I tried to enroll. Like they were soulless, right? Like didn't care about me. They were just on the process. I remember I was trying to get to this sales job in this big company, tech company. And I told them, listen, guys, I'm like extremely hardworking. So I started like 8 and I closed at 10. So I'm like, I'm your guy, right? And they're like, yeah, that's good. But can you do this test where you do this stupid shit? And they're like, and then like, oh, you didn't pass the test or something. And I was like, come on, where is the people-oriented person here where you learn about the person rather than putting them on the process? So I was priding myself from the day one that we were heavily focused on smooth, excellent, and just focus on a good recruitment experience for every that wants to join the organization. I think that recruitment should be one of the top priorities, right, for organization if they really want to build up a great company, right? Just to make sure that every person that go through that process, like they feel special, right? They feel heard, and they feel like, oh, I loved and even I didn't pass, like I wanted to try again, right? And be in kind of that place. Yeah. So I think this is very important. And I felt like it's something that you guys have there in PandaDoc, right? So
we definitely try. I mean, our HR team does an amazing job of trying to create a great candidate experience. And, I think interviewing is always hard because it's not just a centralized process. At the end of the day, each interviewer has an interaction and you've got to make sure that's optimized. And I think I love what you're saying. I mean, a lot of times interviewers just, they don't care. Like it's more like, I got to check the box to do this interview so I can get this person in. What we've really tried to instill is making sure we get the right people, and that interviewing is exceptionally important. Yeah. I spend a lot of time like recruiting myself. And I will meet with any candidate. Like if my VP of sales staff says, Keith, I need you to meet with this AE to close them, we'll absolutely do that. It's important to get the right people, and 100%. We should make every effort we can.
Yeah. Then, I mean, you'll be spending so much time with this person, right? Like I will spend my 5 next years of my life with you. So I wanted to know you. I care about you even right now doing this interview, right? I think that's the mindset that people should have when recruiting, instead of just, oh, this is my job and I need to screen you. It's not a screening. It's like a date, right? Maybe it's your future wife. You don't know, right? So,
well, I know it's not mine, but
awesome. All right. How the company culture and the experience in PandaDoc are different from Google, Adobe, Johnson and Johnson, just generally what is different and special about them in terms of the vibe comparing to what you've had before? Because obviously size of the organization also matters, right? Probably because with like thousands of people with Google and Johnson and Johnson. So anyhow.
Yeah, I would say number one, the pace is much faster. And that's one of the reasons I left big companies, was to get to a place where there's much more pace and a deep caring. And I think, very early at Google, there was a lot of like belief in the mission.
Mm-hmm.
I think as the company got bigger, I was there for 10 years, you saw people less there for the mission and more there for like Google's like a really awesome company with great perks. And I think at PandaDoc, like a lot of people care about what we're doing and they really want to make us the best. And so that is definitely a part of the culture, is this like belief, this love of what we're trying to do. This like hustle, as I would call it, a desire to move fast with urgency. What we do have in common with both Adobe and Google was that testing philosophy. There's a lot of test and iteration here. There's a lot of let's try things, see if they work. I think the other thing is no politics, which I think is a factor of both the size, but also the type of people that Makita and the rest of the leadership team have hired. It's a company where, again, we're trying to do what's right for the customers and our shareholders and our employees. Mm-hmm. And so even though we might disagree, we do it out in the open. There's no politics involved. And so I think that's something that's really special here.
With the majority team of PandaDoc team are being from Eastern Europe, I'm curious, from your experience, what part of the company culture has been influenced by the origin of the people where they're from, or just generally from the Eastern European culture in general?
I think one of the things that's been really interesting, I've worked with Eastern Europeans before, but never to the extent that I have here. A lot of the revenue team is from Eastern Europe, and I'm never going to forget what one of the sales leaders told me before, which is Americans are like peaches. They're soft on the outside, but they're like really hard on the inside, meaning like, oh, we like gush about things, or like, we act so upset, but inside we're like really hard. And he said, and again, I didn't say this, he said it, so Eastern Europeans don't hate me for this, but he's like, Eastern Europeans are like a coconut, hard on the outside, really soft on the inside. So like this hard shell. But once, like, I remember giving like some constructive feedback to someone on my sales team. They like didn't even flinch, right? Just, and then later my HR team is like, Keith, you really upset them. And I was like, what? Like there was no reaction. Versus like if I had said the same thing to an American, it would be like they would have just reacted viscerally. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think where it shows up for us as a culture is that we get this really good dynamic of ideas that come from these two different ways of approaching things. And so you have almost the stoicism, if I turn the coconut analogy into something really positive, that comes out, and that leads to different ways of approaching clients that we, in the West can learn from. And I think that's really helped us get better. And then we've taken some things from the West or from the US and sort of taught our Eastern Europeans about how to sell using those techniques. And I think you get this like magical combination of both.
Yeah. So I'm Ukrainian, so I'm from Eastern Europe originally. And I also have leadership team in the US. So any advice for me or anyone that are in my shoes, from being from Eastern Europe and working with you as leadership, how to build the relationship effectively?
I think being really direct is important. Sometimes I don't always get like the full story.
Right.
And I'll be more effective when I have the full story. So that to me is probably one of the best lessons is, make sure you're sharing the information and, especially once you've established trust. I think it's always hard to establish that trust in the beginning, but once you have it, share the full story, because it just makes everybody better if you have the full understanding of what's going on.
Right. What's the top metric that you look at or you use to measure your success as CRO?
Whether I make the plan or not is the number one, which is tough, because I think one of the really interesting things about being in a private company is trying to build long-term value for the company. And sometimes that long-term value is not linear. It doesn't always go according to the plan. So I feel really good about the long-term value, and the plan should ladder up to that long-term value. That's how we've crafted it. But there's always going to be short-term fluctuations, right? Just because if a large deal pushes out from one quarter to the next, but it closes in the first week of the quarter, yeah, I might have not hit the plan number, but the long-term value creation hasn't changed. And so that's the one thing as a hyper-competitive person that always wants to hit the plan that I have to work on personally, is just making sure that I recognize that long-term value is being created, and the path to get there is important.
So long-term value is an LTV from paid customers over time, or it's a new revenue and then contracts duration for the new revenue? What is that?
No, it's so we hold ourselves accountable on net new ARR, but LTV sums up how those contracts that come in expand. So, we are looking to drive that net new ARR number up over time.
And then if you're building that GTM motion, focusing on that net new ARR, what is that you're focusing on initially to build that strategy on top of, the market data, the sales capabilities, the ideal client? So usually, companies are playing either the marketing hat or marketing ball, the sales ball, or the client success ball to build up the strategy. So taking you as an example, where you guys, when you build that motion, what is that your core principle there?
So it's interesting, because I really think we've got a flywheel, which is today, most of our demand comes from marketing, as we've talked about. And while we're changing that and making it more sales driven and partner driven over time, most of it is coming from marketing, but it's very much a land and expand motion. The companies that come in, and they come in both, as we mentioned, through our PLG motion and our sales led motion. But they come in and they expand. Our account management team does a really good job of driving these customers up over time. And we know that customers who come in add seats or add documents. We know customers who come in on the smaller side do the same thing in the product. We get a really great product experience there. And so it's that flywheel that it just keeps going. And what we hope is that as these customers use us and they send out their PandaDoc's, people become more familiar with PandaDoc and use us more, because it is a really seamless, easy to use experience. And when you are on the counter signing side, you see that, and hopefully you come and use us instead of another provider.
Yeah, I like the flywheel analogy, because you cannot stick to only marketing or sales over time, because someone gonna suffer at the end, or some metrics gonna go down, right? So instead, what you do, you essentially using the flywheel methodology, just kind of focusing one thing at a time, but always turning to another, right? And trying to adjust them and just kind of go from there. So, so you've been as CRO for 2 years, and this is your first role as CRO. How does it suit you?
I love it. Why did I take this role? I think a lot of people say CROs are crazy because you just get all the pressure. But, I wanted to be on the hook, and that's why I left. Again, why did I leave a great company like Adobe? It's because I wanted to help drive impact. Right. And while Adobe is having tons of impact in the digital experiences realm and the digital media realm, even as a senior leader there, I felt like my impact was only so much. And so taking on this role allowed me to have a larger impact. I think the other thing is, as you mentioned, I'm not the CRO who's a sales leader. I'm the CRO who runs all of revenue. And the opportunity to make sure that sales, marketing, and CX align and are focused on the same things is really important to me. I like having everybody marching in the same direction. And I think we've been more effective because of that. So I love it. I do like leading, but I like leading and getting involved in multiple things. Partnerships has been an interesting thing as the sales team has gotten more mature and really good, as the marketing team has improved, as the CX team has tightened up what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I've been spending a lot more time on that partnerships front. And that seems to add a lot of value, both in terms of bringing in new demand and servicing the demand.
What makes this your job worth pursuing? Why do you love it for?
I think you got, if you like pressure, it's a good job. If you like to lead, it's a good job. Ultimately, why did I go this direction? I was in strategy and operations for a long time. Mm-hmm. And while you can see your impact there as someone who wants to have impact, the biggest impact is on what you do for customers. And as a CRO, that's fundamentally what you're doing. You're impacting customers, bringing them in, and in return, they're giving value to your company. And so that is the most tangible and in many ways the most important thing a company can do. And that's why I've moved in that direction. So I would say if you want to have impact and you like the pressure, it's a great job.
CROs are in my industry, are one of the most desirable, sweetest titles to sell to, because everyone wants to sell to CRO, right? So you must have been receiving tons of cold outreach, connections, pitches, opportunities, right? So people wouldn't understand if I didn't learn how to sell to CRO from you, having this opportunity, right? So I have these or that quiz form, 10 quizzes. So you need to choose these or that. And through this, I probably could learn from what can be done better to to close deals with CROs, all right?
Okay.
So do you prefer sales pitches backed by analytics and data, or those that showcase deep, intuitive grasp of your business challenges?
Data.
Okay. Are you more receptive to highly personalized communication, or do you appreciate concise, standardized message that gets straight to the point?
You got to be both. Sorry. It's got to be both. It's got to be personalized and concise. I will give you one tip, which is, I think there's a lot of people who do their research. I mean, somebody did an amazing job. They read my Substack and they quoted something on it, but it's not enough. It's got to be about pain. Mm-hmm. I think pain is the number one thing, and it can't be generic pain. Yes, every CRO wants more pipeline. That's not pain. Where is my pain? Go through the best pitch. Somebody goes through a PandaDoc trial experience and tells me what's wrong with the trial experience and tells me what I've lost from that. That's a great pitch. But cue my trial signups just went up. But I'm a really big believer in tell me what I'm the actual pain you can solve. And it's got to be real. It can't be replace my title with somebody else's or my company with somebody else's company.
Can you give an example of any cold email or message that you replied to recently that got your attention? What was it about?
I mean, I still remember one I got last year that was fantastic. Yeah. It was an AE from a sales stack company, and she had just done a ton of research. She had multi-threaded my entire organization, and she was like, I've heard from 5 of your AEs, this is a problem. And 2 of your sales managers, this is a problem. And I know you can see it in your data here and here. And I was like, wow, that's nice. Really good. It's interesting to me though, because I think a lot of CROs don't care, to be honest, which is unfortunate. So, I mean, I paid attention and we had some pretty deep dialogue with her company. But as another example, we were talking about CPQ tools earlier. I can't tell you how many companies I talk to where they hate their tool, right? And there's 2 leading tools on the market and both are horrendous. And then I'll go and pitch the CRO. I'll say, hey, we've done our diligence. We've talked to your team. They hate this tool, and it's taking you 2 weeks to get a quote out the door, right? Time kills all deals. It's taking you 2 weeks. Your sales team hates it. You should change it. We can solve this pain for you. And they're like, not a priority.
Wow.
That surprises me.
Wow. All right. It's fun. I have a few more. All right. Let's do this.
Okay.
When considering a new solution, which resonates more? A quick turnaround on investment or the promise of long-term strategic value? Turnaround investment ROI or long-term or value over time or short-term?
I would say short-term. If you can prove to me that you're like, I think that's one of the problems in sales is everybody promises a great ROI. I remember another company that told us their ROI was like 300x. And it was a very well-known brand name that salespeople love, and they love the tool. We love the tool too. But I was like, there's no way that's the ROI.
Right.
I know it's not. Because if we got rid of this tool and we didn't have the tool before, our sales would have cratered, and they didn't. So I think knowing that I can get to value quickly, once I can get that, I'm confident we can scale the value, but I need to know I can get there fast.
Do you think there starts being more and more pressure, short-term pressure from leadership and from the market generally to get those short-term results right now, and that also drives the decision to focus on the short-term value rather than the long-term?
It depends on your leaders. I mean, I think we're really good about focusing on the long-term at PandaDoc. I do think there is a lot of pressure to deliver in the short-term.
Right. But in case you can deliver short-term, then it's not going to be a problem to deliver long-term, right? Basically, that's the idea.
Yeah, I think if you're confident in what you're doing, then absolutely.
Do real-world success stories influence your decision more than interactive demos of the product? Good demo or a success case study?
I love a good demo. The case studies, I think there's always wiggle room. Like, I'm never sure I fully trust them. I mean, we try to be really honest and transparent in our case studies, but I think demos show what is possible. What I really like most of all is a proof of value, though. If I can, instead of a case study and instead of a demo, show me like for 2 months or 1 month or 3 months of using your product, what's possible. If you can do that, if you're willing to bet that your product will bring that value, then I'm willing to buy. It's got to be easy to implement, though. That's the trade-off there.
Yeah. Are you more likely to engage with someone who reaches out cold or someone introduced through your professional network?
Professional network.
In person or virtual meeting more effective for you?
I think virtual, just by nature of how we do business now, and people are located all across the world. Yeah.
You've recently been part of SaaStr and the Inbound. You went to Inbound as well, right?
Yes.
Have many people tried to sell you something Inbound when you've been after the panel?
You'd be surprised. No? I mean, not one person said anything, which surprised me. And I was also surprised because I was on the attendee list, so I didn't actually get any outbounds about being on the attendee list. And
people became more lazy. It was like a go-to standard approach. You go to Inbound attendee list and you just kind of scrape everyone, send some cold out emails.
Yeah, I think everything was like very non-personalized.
Yeah. When reviewing offers, do you dive into detailed proposals or focus on a high-level executive summary?
Details.
What influences your purchasing decision more, the vendor's understanding of your industry or the cutting-edge feature of their solution?
That's a tough one. I'm cheating again, but I would say pain. Like, you have to understand my pain. It's not really the feature that wins me over. It's, can you solve the pain? So I guess I would lean more towards the industry because my pain may be different than what the others in the industry have, but I think it's more likely to be that than features. And I don't really believe in the feature sale. I believe in value selling and focusing on pain.
Confirm me if I'm wrong or curious to hear your thoughts on this. most of salespeople are trained to sell on the solution, not on the problem. So they're focusing on how they can bring on the solution to the problem rather than focusing more on the problem. And then the second part is in our case studies, we're always focusing on the result rather than focusing on how we're solving the problem. So in a way, we talk about, hey, we deliver this ROI or this X to this company instead of here's the problem or here's how we solve this problem, basically. Yeah.
Definitely. We ran 2 marketing cells for our latest campaign. We did like a positive and a negative, right? One was win deals, one was don't lose deals. Guess which one won? And it won by a large amount. Don't lose deals. People are afraid of loss. Not everybody, but I think universal fear of missing out or fear of loss is a bigger motivator. And so I try to weave that in as much as possible.
All right. So last one here. What will give you more confidence? Ability to try before you buy or well-defined SLA? Outlining expectations.
Try before buy every day. Yeah, it came from PLG, so I love the try before buy.
You like trialing. Gotcha. And then PandaDoc is big on the trial as well. So you mentioned that. That's cool. All right. And then this is not that this or that, but generally curious. What is the big no-no when selling to a CRO like yourself? It's an open-ended question, by the way. So
I think laziness, like thinking that you've already got it. I think it's more common with big brands that are the most well-known, right? They take your business for granted. I want to see we know sales processes, right? CROs, we know what sales looks like. We want you to bring your best. You better bring your A game. And if it's not going to land well. There was a story on my LinkedIn this week about a company that they were choosing between 2 software providers.
Okay.
And one was the one they wanted and one was the one they didn't want. Like they didn't even want to take the call with the one they didn't want. But the one that they wanted took their business for granted and didn't show up well. They didn't go into details on their proposal, and the other one wanted their business. They gave them the love. They were available anytime. They would move things to accommodate the CRO schedule. And the one they didn't want ended up winning the deal. I thought that was such a spot on case of, making sure you bring your A game and you can't take things for granted. It's just, there's too much good software out there now.
Yeah. It's just too much good business out there, right? So if you're dropping the ball, there's someone else going to pick it up for you. So yeah, don't drop the ball. All right. Keith, it's been great having you on the show. I appreciate all the insights and great talking to you and great learning more about PandaDoc and, everything that you guys stand for. I had fun.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful. I appreciate all the questions, some real challengers in there, but it was great.